For 12 months, we have been lied to in a really major way. And these lies, they impacted monetary policy. These errors impacted you, your business, your family, your financial future. Mine too. They impacted our buyers and our sellers in a very real way. And we have every right to be angry. But it's probably more productive to focus on what comes next. Every month, we receive the jobs report, and it tells us how many jobs were added. Job growth is a really good indicator of economic strength, so this report gets a lot of attention. And for the past year, the numbers have been really hard to predict, and then once received, even harder to make sense of. It felt like there was a disconnect. Main Street didn't seem to be rolling in the dough. The people I talk to on a daily basis, that's what I mean by Main Street. I poke around in people's finances. I talk to them about how well they're doing with money. And it didn't seem like they were doing great. But the data kept coming in, saying that despite higher and higher borrowing costs, despite the central bank's efforts to tighten up, the money was flowing and corporations were hiring and everyone should be happy because the economy is doing great. Except it wasn't, actually. Or well, to be more factually correct, there was not as much job growth as we thought. A revision this week adjusted the jobs numbers down by 800,000. Okay, let's be very, very accurate. 818,000. Or if you get your news from social media, 1 million jobs were cooked up over the past year. Yikes. And the news week got busier from there. Jerome Powell spoke from Jackson Hole and he finally said it. He confirmed a September rate cut. He didn't mention this big jobs revision news, but I want to talk about it more. So let's do it. Specifically because it's gotten people really heated. I mean, I might have gotten you worked up at the beginning of this. It was intentional, but it was also a little bit manipulative. So let me explain. While I'm not good at conspiracy theories, I do like to talk about them every once in a while. And this week, I went pretty heavy on one on my Instagram. I actually am quite fired up on that one, so you should go check it out. But I always feel a bit uncomfortable with this whole concept of conspiracy theories, or when average folks talk about the way high ups like they're complete idiots. Stick with me here for a second. I'm going to bring this around, I promise. We're in a very politically charged time. And I've heard people who haven't gotten into law school, been elected or re-elected as an attorney general, talk about what a ditz Kamala Harris is. You'll likely sit in a room this very weekend with people who've never spoken on any kind of stage for any size audience and listen to them criticize how she speaks on a stage 2000s. Now, don't start getting triggered because I'm going to switch sides. Personally, before I call Donald Trump a moron for stumbling over his words about electronics, boats, sharks, I remind myself of a few things. I haven't built a real estate empire yet. I haven't been elected president of the United States of America. And I don't have one of the most recognizable names in the entire world. So maybe I'm not 10 steps ahead of this guy and shouldn't talk shit like I am. I'm bringing this around, I promise, stay with me. Lately, especially if you are in the real estate industry, you've heard people talk about how dumb the feds are. That they are likely out of touch with reality and completely screwing up monetary policy and ruining our country completely. If you've been following this blog for a while, you might remember when I talked about how I think this comes across as a little bit pompous. I could sit here and say they've made a balls of tackling inflation. I really could, because I pay a lot of attention to this. But then again, I'm just a mortgage lender in Reno. Before I run my mouth about how this Georgetown graduate, who worked his way up to partner at the Carlyle Group before founding Severn Capital Partners and served in various bipartisan roles where he received praise from both sides. Before I say what a dumbass he is, I try to remember that I graduated from the University of Nevada, Reno. And while that might be the Ivy League of the desert, I'm still just a loan officer. So I'm going to try to remember my station in life before I run my mouth. Why? Why should we avoid false confidence? Because it helps you see things for what they really are. Yes, it's possible Joe Biden completely cooked the books on the entire economy and forced the Bureau of Labor Statistics to publish blatantly false information about the number of jobs created as a part of his conniving plan to be reelected. It is possible. We also know that the BLS has been severely understaffed for quite some time. We know this has led to delays in data collection and analysis, and that it for sure impacts the quality of the data itself. It might also be helpful to zoom out and remember that this is an annual process. This revision comes out every single year, even non-election years. And the surveys are just reconciled as part of the process. Certainly a revision of this size is alarming, but it's not the first one. In 2009, the revision was 824,000. jobs. Am I trying to minimize the news? No way. I lived through the consequences of what these numbers did every single month. And I talked to many intelligent people, qualified people who couldn't find work. And while I was reading about all the layoffs in various different industries, trying to get my borrowers a better interest rate based on putting together the economic data in the best way I could. Then a jobs report would come out and screw everything up, smack me in the face and everyone else in our industry, and rates would skyrocket. The data being off had major implications on monetary policy, but also on all of us in the lower stations who were simply trying to do real estate. It impacted buyers and sellers every single time the numbers were wrong. Does anyone else feel like this is some sick game jerking us and the markets around like this? 275,000 jobs added. Guess how many jobs were subtracted? Next month, they'll revise it down, and then gets revised down significantly next month, but nobody talks about that. That's shh. There's a more accurate but very different number released. I can't make it make sense. Something is missing. See, I've been scratching my head about this for over a year. You guys watched it firsthand, and there's proof. I still don't think it's productive to be inflammatory. So instead of the tone I started with, let's change gears and finish with what you and I should actually do with the information that will serve us in some way, specifically financially. Let's start paying really close attention to these job numbers, guys. This data will be a major driver of interest rates for the coming months. If there's concerns of a job loss recession, that will increase demand for mortgage bonds and that will decrease mortgage interest rates. So pay attention. Prep time is almost over. We've been preparing for a long time for a market shift. We've been talking about it. You've been gathering information, identifying your markers, and talking the talk for 18 months. Now the strike zone is approaching, and you need to be ready to take action. For everyone out there trying to time the market, the knife is about to fall, so get your gloves on so you can catch it without bleeding. And lastly, this is unofficial advice, but you might remember my concerns about what the coming months will do to all of us. Look beyond the headlines and quick clips, the TikToks and the memes designed to polarize and make you think that anyone who disagrees with you and doesn't think the way you do shouldn't be your friend and that everyone on the other side is a bunch of clowns. I've got a strong suspicion that neither side really cares about you or me, and that it's entirely on us to make our own lives better.